Hi, my name is deBuzna. I'm with Oracle GoldenGate Product Management. Today we'll be talking about Oracle Monitor and Veridata 12.1.3. It's a release we just had coming out, and we've added some exciting new features. I'd like to walk you through them. First, let me give you context about Oracle GoldenGate. Oracle purchased GoldenGate in 2009. The company's actually been around since the mid-90s, and we're pretty pervasive throughout the market. You'll see a few logos here, but we're really embedded deeply into the Fortune 500, and we're thousands of customers worldwide. It's one of these technologies that you probably use a dozen times today without even realizing it. If you purchased a song online, if you poured yourself a cup of coffee, if you got into a car, really if you made any kind of transaction or used any product, there's a good chance that GoldenGate was there being used. And one logo you won't see here is the Oracle logo. Since 2009, Oracle has embedded GoldenGate throughout the organization. It's really seeing a lot of benefits in here. So one day I hope to be back here on Oracle University and give you a demo of just how Oracle is using it internally. Okay, what are really the use cases here? Just a quick summary. GoldenGate really takes the data from one system, a database system or a message system, and transports it over to another. And there's several use cases for this. We might be migrating people between data centers. We might be migrating people into the cloud or maybe off the cloud. We have a lot of high availability use cases where people might want to have their data centers in different data grids. You know, with the rising temperatures, we see a lot more blackouts, and when we want to do failovers, typically we'll have them on different electrical grids. A lot of people use it just for feeding warehouses. We have a lot of different systems. We have a DB2 system, we have a SQL Server system, we have Oracle systems, and we want to feed it into one large warehouse to get a single point of view of the data. These are all very common use cases for it. And we even see now with ODI, our sister product here in the data integration suite for Oracle, some deep integration with the Oracle Data Integrator product, where we can feed directly them the real-time change data, and they can do the transformations on them. So we're very well positioned for cloud. We're working in the cloud without any modification to our software, which puts us in a very good position to be adding some value add into that and taking it really to the next level. So these are just some of the main use cases, but GoldenGate's a very flexible architecture, and these pieces that I'm showing you now are really kind of the Lego blocks that you can really build out virtually for any kind of scenario for where you want to move data, transactional data, message data in real time. So what we have here is really just three things in this slide. We have a change data capture, and that's capturing the data from a message system or a database, and we transform that into basically a system independent format. And from there, that's where we can really do anything with the data. We capture data from Oracle, we put it in our format, and then we can send it to Java message system. We can send it to DB2. We can send it to SQL Server. It really doesn't matter. I could put that thing on a thumb drive, go walk over to another computer and use it as input into a whole nother system. So we have a loosely decoupled architecture that's very flexible. So then the third missing piece here from the capture, the queuing of the data, what we call trail files, and then we have an apply side. And that's where we would have a specific apply for an Oracle database, a SQL Server database, and whatnot. So that's a real quick view on the architecture, but I just want to show you that because that's what we're going to be monitoring here today in the first half of the presentation. Okay, so to monitor GoldenGate, we have the Oracle GoldenGate Management Pack, and when you look at that, that's really three products. The first one is the Enterprise Manager Cloud Control. We have a plugin, and that allows you to monitor all of your GoldenGate instances in just one simple page, one view, one nice dashboard to see everything quickly, see if it's up and down, see what the latency or lag is between them all, and a couple key metrics. And then we allow you to drill into those, and then you can set up alerts in the EM framework with the incidents. We can incorporate this with other pieces of the EM framework, automatically generate a remedy trouble ticket, for example, and dig into the whole system, the whole ecosystem for which EM is so well known for monitoring. And then we also have a standalone product that has essentially the same core features for GoldenGate as the EM plugin, but it's just focused solely on GoldenGate, and these are based on WebLogic now in the back end. But this is really just a slimmed down version of what we might have in Enterprise Manager. Same features, but just really focused for GoldenGate. And that's actually what I'll be demoing with you today. Now all the new features I'll be showing today with GoldenGate Monitor is also available in the Enterprise Manager. And then lastly, we have Oracle GoldenGate Director. That's our legacy monitoring tool, and that works with all our older versions of GoldenGate. Some of the systems that are still around. We do have customers who have been using the same version of GoldenGate for years and years and years, and it's not broken, they don't want to change it, and we're going to go ahead and leave this, our legacy monitoring product for them. Okay, GoldenGate Monitor. Quickly, it's a web-based thin client graphical monitoring console for all your GoldenGate solutions. You can configure and send email alerts, SNMP alerts, external applications can be called from there. We can send them some data. We can look at the alerts on screen, and then you can go and troubleshoot your issues. Is there something going on? Hopefully there's nothing going wrong, but when there is, you can go dig in. We have to keep historical statistics. We can visualize the trends, create some custom views, and I'll show you some of that here in just a moment. What's new in 12.1.3? Well, previously in our 11.2 and previous versions, this was really just a read-only system. We were purely monitoring. Something's going wrong, send me an alert, let me know about it. Otherwise, I don't really want to know about it. But now, what we have is the ability to take action. We can actually go in there, and if there's something wrong, we can go into the process and we can actually start and stop processes. We can actually edit configuration files. We've given you more troubleshooting, so you can look deeper into some of these log files that are available to see what the history of this process was and what might have led up to this failure. We're now integrated with WebLogic Server 12.1.3. That gives us a whole lot of things in there. One of the things I'd like to highlight is single sign-on. We can now integrate in with your corporate LDAP systems. We've also expanded our support for monitoring GoldenGate for DB2 on ZOS, and we've got enhanced security built around all of this. We have better data visualization and a lot more. Quickly, let me show you the architecture here. We have GoldenGate between a source system and a target system. The top, let's say it's our source, bottom would be our target. And then we have agents that are running there with GoldenGate. And those agents would be feeding the GoldenGate Monitor server. Now this could be feeding the Enterprise Manager server as well. It's the same architecture. We have a backend repository keeping a history of these statistics, and then we can also call out external systems. We can send emails, we can send SNMP alerts, we can call out the external programs. And EM would have the extra box on there where they could call PL SQL packages. So let's go ahead and take a look at the product, and I'll highlight what's new. So this is a login screen for Oracle GoldenGate Monitor. This is where I said we'd have the single sign-on integration with WebLogic Server here in 12.1.3. We can quickly see all the GoldenGate instances that are running right now. But what Monitor does have over the EM for now solution is that it'll actually go ahead and figure out all the connected pieces between two hosts and tie them together into a single solution view. When I click on these individual components, such as the change data capture, I can quickly see all the current statistics that are being captured for this particular process. So one of the most popular ones is the lag or latency. When I click on the lag, it brings me over to the data visualization screen. So I can see that I have pretty good lag happening right now. Let me look in the last 24 hours to get a deeper view. Because I did have some lag, I know, at some point. But I do have a very high-functioning system at this moment. I can also bring up a second graph below here and look at a second metrics and compare them. So delta operations is a popular one. This is the number of operations that we're capturing and applying on between two systems. And this, I'm going to give you a last 24 hours, and I'm going to have to start okay, so here we go. Nothing like a live demo. So you can tell this isn't canned, this is from a live system. So you can see my little script I have running in the background here that's generating some periodic transactions. And we see a corresponding spike where I had some here. This could have been for any series of reasons. Maybe there was just a slight machine hiccup or network. But even with that, you only see very low latency. But you know, mileage is going to vary with the different systems, but here's what my system is looking like right now. So I'm comparing the number of operations coming through the system with the latency. And I can look at any number of metrics in this way. So any numerical metric, I can go ahead and look at these. So these are a subset of what you saw on the first page. We have some string metrics would naturally map out. And then we can also bring these data over into a graph, into a table view as well. So let me go back over here to the data and alerts view. So again, we have all of our metrics here, but we can also generate alert definitions, which will create an alert for us. So I'll come in here into the screen and I'll give it a quick name. We'll call it capture down. I want to make this an error alert. And suppression time means simply that don't keep sending me emails, for example, after for 30 minutes after you've sent me one. So every 30 minutes this would be sending me an email rather than constantly barraging you. We have different object types in here. This is the delivery, the apply piece, the capture. We can do it at the host level, the instance level. So those are all those metrics that you saw before. So here I'm going to say status. We have all our different statuses, but I'm going to say our status not equal to running. I can assign this to any number of users. And these users that will show up here will be integrated with the LDAP system if they have the correct role on that system. So they have to be a viewer or some kind of administrator to be able to show up in this list. But this list is getting fed directly from that LDAP system. I have my different object types, and then I also have some additional attributes that I can include in my metric. So I might want to include the name of the process, what the lag was at the time where it went down, what the actual status of it was. Can look at perhaps my total operations at that time, and any number of different metrics that I want to add into that message. And this would be applied to the email, the SNMP, or the command line messages. So I'll submit that. And now I have defined an alert. So let me go back to my data and alerts view, show you the solution. What we've added new for 12.1.3. So what I just showed you has already been existing, with the exception that we've added some more metrics and some better graphing for those metrics. But what we're adding in 12.1.3 now is the ability to look at some of the report files and also to manage the configuration. So I can see my report file is coming up directly from the operating system. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And I can have direct access to the report file. So for my GoldenGate users, you know what report files are. And this is one thing that we're missing before, is having access to all these report files as well as the discard file. And then now also the GGS error log. This is the main error log message for all of the GoldenGate instance. I can now come over here and click on the configuration, and I can actually edit my configuration file for this, for any of these processes with the proper permissions. So I can see that I have my extract name, my table names. If I have an include file, the way we've handled that is we'll open up a separate tab for that automatically for you. So what I have in this include file is my user ID information, and this is the old way of doing it. With GoldenGate 12c, we've actually added a method to hide the username information. So now that we're using an Oracle wallet and credential store under the covers, we can actually come in here now and use just an alias. So you wouldn't even know that I'm the username, nor would you be able to see the encrypted password. So we'll go ahead and save that, say yes. And then now what's new also with 12.1.3 is I can actually come up here and start and stop the processes. I can do it from the toolbar, or I can also do it from the tree navigation as well. So if I want to start this from the toolbar, I like to keep the solution view up here, I can go ahead and stop the process because I want to take I want the new parameter settings to take effect. So it will take just a moment for that information to process back to through the server and to the GoldenGate instance, and then come back and give us a status change. So now we can see that the status has been updated, and we see that there's an alarm on this as well as the process is down. We even have a dancing little red bell over here telling us that there is an error. So let's go ahead and see exactly what that error is by looking at our logs. As my GoldenGate users know, the number one place we look is first our report file. Let's go ahead and make that bigger. So what happened here? I can quickly tell, scrolling around on you, that I received the command stop. Somebody came in and actually stopped this program. I wonder who that was. It was me. I just showed you that. But the point is that we can see why the process stopped. So let's go back over here again, and we'll just start the process using the tree navigation. And now I see that I also have the options. This is the same with the apply process, the replicats, and the extract processes. So I'm going to go ahead and start this up again. We'll look at the processes again, and look at my solution. And I can see, you know what, the process is still down. Why is that? Well, let's go back to our configuration file. Let's go back to our report file. I'll make that bigger for you. And I see, oh, I did have an actual bend process. Where we saw here before that the process was stopped by somebody, here now we actually see an error. Alias, my alias 11 was not found in the credential store. Process of bending. Well, let's look back at our configuration. Let's look at the file in question that has the login information. And I'll see, oh, I realized that I actually gave it the wrong name. It was my alias 1, not my alias 11. So now I'm going to go ahead, restart this process. So when we start these processes, we have some options specifically for the replicat, or we can also free text in some of the options. We'll be adding more options as GoldenGate progresses. Now we see the process is back up and running. So now we've been able to send an alert, be notified when that alert occurs, and also be able to take action on it. We have our alert history for our extract process, and this is also would store the entire history of the alerts for this process. So now back in the data and alerts view, we can view our solution and see that everything is running just fine. One last thing I want to mention to you here is with this new security, we've added some additional security with user management. So I can click on a user if I have the correct administrative rights, and I can allow them access to certain GoldenGate instances. So this user will have the role as GoldenGate operator on these instances, and only these instances. Go over here and show you view management as well. View management is where I can take what we were showing in the solution and give you a subset view of that. So I could take my solution, drag and drop it over here to this view, and remove pieces or add pieces to this as necessary. So if I just really had a complicated configuration, I could remove, or I could focus in on specific objects. But for here, I'll just show you, I'll just take the view and just do a subset of it. We'll hide the solution, submit. So we'll come back to the main viewing area and we'll look at my view. And we can see that we made our own view. We can zero in, or we can connect different solutions into a single view. All right, so that's my quick demo of what's new with Oracle GoldenGate Monitor. We've added essentially these new tabs for the logging and the configuration. We've added some additional security, and now you can take action on your data. Okay, so that's new. What's new with GoldenGate Monitor? So let me shift over now to GoldenGate Veridata. GoldenGate Veridata is a data validation tool. It's going to make sure that the data on the source and the target are in sync. And one of the things I often get when I talk to customers is, well, why do you have a product that's going to tell me that GoldenGate is really doing its job? And when we compare the data between source and target, GoldenGate is almost never the reason why the data is out of sync. It doesn't even make our top 10 list. I'll give you a top 6 list right now, why data goes out of sync. The number one reason why we see data going out of sync and I've talked to hundreds of customers, done a lot of on-site implementations before I got into product management with GoldenGate. The number one reason I see is that data is actually out of sync. What happens, the most common thing, is that we put out of balance characters into the data. With some databases, for Oracle example, if you set your client NLS lang setting to the same as the database, you can actually put in out of bound characters. You can't do it through SQL+, so it doesn't seem obvious to a lot of people at first, but JDBC, OCI, if you don't set the same setting, you can very easily set in out of bounds characters. And we actually have some customers who do this on purpose. They know they have an ASCII character set on their system. It's an old system, but they want to put in some European characters in there, and they know that they're doing this and their application can handle it. The problem happens is when you migrate this data from a source system to a target system. When you load it in, usually that loading process will take that out of bounds character and bring it in bounds. A lot of times what we'll see is a kanji character on an ASCII database will just turn into a null on the target system. We'll see this often with email addresses, where somebody might be in a different country signing up with an email address that was allowed to be put in a source system and doesn't show up in the target system, and then you've lost access to that user. You've lost access to emailing that user. But we've seen numerous ways where this has happened. We also see them with dates being set to invalid date values. So you might not know this is happening in your database. A lot of people, it's old data. It's from before they worked there. But it happens all the time, and you really don't know your data until you try to move it from one place to another. And this is what we'll see the most. This is probably 90% of what we see. The second one, what we see a lot, are no logging operations that happen on the source. By no logging, what I mean is that we'll set this in the transaction. You say, hey, don't log this to the transaction logs. I'm just going to do a quick bulk load. And I'm not worried about going to the transaction logs. I just need to get it into the database as fast as possible. We see this a lot with warehouses. And then the next database backup will pick up all this information by virtue of just copying down at the data file level. So when we do a no logging, if it's not in the redo logs or the transaction logs, then we as GoldenGate can't see those transactions and it won't get propagated to the next system. Now a lot of times there might be different groups working on this database loading it, especially with warehouses where you have multiple groups feeding in, and they might not necessarily know that it's happening. So we'll uncover that this is going on with a lot of customers by using Veridata. And then next is we'll see gaps in instantiation. This is a lot of time for new customers who haven't really replicated their data before, and they've got a timing mismatch between when they started change data capture versus the initial copy and load from the system. They might have a gap in the data. Now, GoldenGate by itself is inherently checking the validity of your data. Any replication tool really is doing this. Anytime you update or delete some data, you've just validated the fact that that data got inserted. You can turn on conflict detection, resolution, and handling procedures to do even more fine-grained validation of this data. When you do an update, you can check to see that the data on the target looks like the data did on the source before you updated it. So the inherent nature of replication itself allows you to do some real-time data validation. What Veridata adds is this data that you're not necessarily touching. It might be some legacy data, it might be some data that you just simply insert and don't update later. But it'll tell you if that data is out of sync. And then the last three, I'll just kind of group together, but sometimes people just make a mistake. They connected to the wrong system. They didn't configure their connection settings correctly. We've seen the source archiving, purging jobs that are running on the source get cloned to the target, so now they're both running on both sides, and that's throwing data out of sync. We've seen people wanting to validate the target system before a switchover on a migration, and they have their read-only reports, which are actually updating some workflow tables in the background. But those 6 really comprise, I'd say, about 99% of the reasons that we see out-of-sync data. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at what's the main feature set for Veridata. So we have it's a high-speed, heterogeneous data comparison and now repair tool. Now, it's very easy to say high speed, but how are we really high speed? Well, we work outside the database. We can pull all this data out, and we can just use a mid-tier server to do all our subsetting and our hashing and our comparison of data. We don't overburden the database with all these extra processes going on. And this actually gives us a lot better performance. We can actually sort data outside of the database than Oracle or DB2 or SQL Server can sort inside the database. So we're not locking the table, we can subset the data, and we work with replication, and I'll give you an architecture slide to explain how that works. But we're not tied to replication. Veridata can be used completely as a standalone tool. And then we maintain a history of all these, the data that we did compare, what the outcome of it was, and we keep detailed statistics and some visualization. So what's new in Veridata 12.1.3? Well, we have data repair ability between heterogeneous systems. So now we can actually fix that out-of-sync data that we were just flagging before. We can go ahead and fix it heterogeneously between SQL Server and Oracle systems, DB2, whatever we're comparing. We can now go ahead and repair it. We also have secure sockets layer in IPv version 6 for our agents. We're now integrated with Oracle Web Logic 12.1.3. So before we were running on Tomcat, now we're integrated with the power of Oracle Web Logic, which gives us a number of things, not the least of which is single sign-on or LDAP integration. We keep some of this out-of-sync data stored on the file system in XML files, and now we can use strong encryption to encrypt those data. We have some enhanced security built around this so that now that we can actually take action on the data, we now have additional roles and responsibilities, so not everybody who's running these out-of-sync reports can also go ahead and fix these data. We've got some streamlined navigation and a lot more. I'm going to show you the architecture real quick, and then we'll go ahead and show you a demo. All right, here's the architecture. What we have are agents that can be installed anywhere. They're making JDBC connections, but we typically like them to be installed as close to the databases as possible. Sometimes that's not possible, but that's typically a best practice. Those agents will select the data out of the database. They'll literally do a select star, usually on the first run, and then they'll hash that data and then send the data and the primary key over the network. So we're not sending the entire select query over the network. Typically, we're just sending the hash value and the primary key over to the Veridata server. The Veridata server now is where all the sorting happens. So we're doing the hashing outside the database, then we send over to the Veridata server, and it's applying a multi-threaded processes to sort through all of this data, compare them, and then it makes a list. And this is kind of where the magic, where Veridata happens, where people always ask me, how do you work on systems that are actively replicating between themselves? You know, how do you know about these in-flight transactions? And that's where we make that first list, and we say, this might be out of sync. Take a pause, and then we'll go ahead and take that list and just check those rows and just double check them to make sure that they really are out of sync the second time. And any rows that show up out of sync on that second pass are then considered out of sync. And then those are what we're reporting back for out of sync. And that's what we can go ahead and repair. So let me go ahead and give you a quick demo of this. Here we have the GoldenGate Veridata login screen. When we log in, we see the landing page, and it shows us the most recent run jobs. I'll go ahead and run a comparison job that I've already gone ahead and set up ahead of time, called my comparison job. What we can see here is that from the command line, we could also run this through a product called Vericom that ships with the product. We can also have some filters on previous runs of this job. So if I've run this job before, I can go ahead and run the same job and just tell it to compare only that which was showing as out of sync from the last time. But this time I'm going to go ahead and run the comparison job. I also have profiles in here that will allow me to have different behaviors for these processes. For example, I can have, it might tell me how many parallel comparisons could be running at a time. By default, we only have 4 comparisons running, but you can change that to any number depending on how much processing power you have. Let me also show you the comparison list that I've set up. So I have some 100 or so tables in this comparison list for you already. Let's go ahead and run the job. And what we see is Veridata running through these. Now typically this page will only update every minute because we figure you're going to have very large tables in the order of hundreds of megabytes. We can compare terabytes of data, and it will take a certain amount of time. I'm often asked, how long will it take? And I usually will reply with, how long does it take to do a select star from your table, and double that. That's a very rough rule of thumb, but it will all depend. So here we can see that we're only crawling through 4 at a time. We're taking the defaults, and it's already seen that 15 are in sync, 4 are out of sync, 4 are currently running, and there's 76 waiting. So now it's gone through, 71 is waiting, and it will keep updating this. until we're complete. All right, now that we see the comparison job is complete, we'll see it visually indicated down here at the icon that there are some out of syncs, and then we see a visualization that most of our data is in sync. Oh, now we have them all complete. We see that 4 out of sync and 95 are in sync. So we will now go over to our finished jobs. In our finished jobs table, gives us a little bit more information. We have the whole job run time. I had some small tables here. It was about a minute. It did 99 tables. It compared, so that's a total of 198 tables, 99 on each side. I have out of sync 4 showing. Nothing failed. Nothing got canceled. So let me go straight into the out of sync report. The out of sync report tells me quickly how many rows were initially considered out of sync. I have 2 inserts that need to be done upon the target. So when we're always in reference to what would be changed on the target, we consider that the source is always in sync and the target would be out of sync. If you want to reverse that, it's when you define your connections, you would just tell that the source is the target and the target is the source. So it keeps the interface much simpler just by always considering that the target is what we're going to update, and that's what these terms are in reference to. So we would have to do 2 inserts to the target to bring some rows into sync. We'd have to update 8 rows on the target and delete 2 other rows on the target to bring this into sync. We can tell that we've repaired nothing so far. We have had no failed repairs, and there's a count of 4 that still need to be repaired. So by default, we have none of the tables expanded, but we do see a table name down in the group, and we see that for each table, I can see that there's 3 out of sync for this table, 1, 2, and 6. So let's expand one of these. And then each table will have its own summary, and by default everything's checked. But I can see here I have a delete operation, and it'll actually show you the row that we would be deleting to bring this back into sync. It shows you which insert we would be performing to bring this back into sync, and then the update, the bad value being, or the value on the bottom which we would replace with the value on the top. You can see the month here is different, and then the other rows are going to be the same. So let's just go ahead and run this repair. We see again that it's going through each of these tables and it's running through these. So now what it's doing, it's going and reselecting these data from the source system and applying them to the target system. What we're also doing is, by default, we are taking the values and putting from the source system and putting them in the where clause on the target system to make sure that that row hasn't changed. This is an option that we can turn off in the profile, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But let's look at our finished job. So now we can see that everything is in sync. I can't run a repair on it the second time. And now we see that the report shows that we have been repaired. All these data are now in sync. I could go ahead and run this job again. I can run this job, finish jobs. So that was my comparison that was showing out of sync the first time. What I can do is I can bring up this job and I can run it again. I've already retrieved the comparison list, but now I can just go ahead and run this and say, just preview the previous out of sync results, only compare that which was out of sync shown as the last time. Here's where I would change my max concurrent threads if I want to do more than 4 tables at a time. There's additional options that we can set in here. Click OK to have the effects take place. So now it's subsetted this data and says, I'm only going to check these tables and these rows on these tables that were showing out of sync from the last time. I just want to out of sync, and then I can also change it here. So let's go ahead and run the job, because now I'm going to double check just to make sure that my data really are in sync now. And look at that. Everything is showing up in perfect sync, and that's the new features of what we just added to Veridata, the ability to not only view the out of syncs as we did before, but now to actually go ahead and bring back into sync any data that is out of sync. So That was Oracle GoldenGate Veridata and Monitor 12.1.3. You can see between the two there was a common theme where you can take action on your data. Whereas before we were just reporting on GoldenGate, we were just reporting on your data integrity, but now you can actually take action on your GoldenGate instances and you can repair that out-of-sync data. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and of course Oracle.com. Thanks.